Hello and welcome to the Association for Coaching podcast. My name is Rob Lawrence and I'm your host for this Boost Your Coaching Business series. Today I have with me someone with 25 years of experience in operations and business coaching and is the CEO of Rising Vibe Limited, which aims to support the well-being and performance of organisations by bringing organisational goals and human needs together. So I'm really excited about today's conversation as we're going to talk about not only embracing change as you boost your coaching business, but also how we can embrace masculine and feminine energies to help us along the way. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Lou Banks. Lou, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
Great to have you on the podcast, Lou. So this short series is about boosting your business, but before we get into that, I know you've got quite a story to share. So I'd love to give our listener a sense of who you are and what it is that you do and how you show up in the world today and what it is you do with Rising Vibe. So let's start there, Lou. What's the background?
So my background, I'm an operator at heart. And I got into the learning and development, organizational development, coaching world by chance, really. So I didn't set out to become a practitioner in this area at all. I was an on the ground, out with the people operator working for a DIY retailer. That's where my career really started properly, I guess. And I noticed that I was quite successful working with people on the ground, frontline, who weren't in a great space and maybe were feeling a little bit angry, resentful, not really wanting to engage in a change or be part of something the business was doing. And I was always quite comfortable to engage with that kind of resistance. It didn't bother me. I wasn't put off by it. I would just become very curious about it. I don't enjoy confrontation. Nobody enjoys confrontation, but I guess I don't feel afraid of it, if that makes sense. I'm quite happy to step into it and get underneath what might be going on for people. So that really moved me into more of the change world. And then I transitioned into learning and development, which I love. But I guess the main part of my backstory, so to speak, is I am very keen to be myself. I'm very keen to be around people who are being themselves. I mean, I don't really like the authentic word. I think it's a bit overused. I just like to talk about being real, being yourself, being open, saying what you mean. I don't like politics. I don't enjoy that game playing stuff. I mean, in and out of work is just not me. And what I noticed was as I tried to progress through my career, that approach wasn't always welcomed. And completely, holding my hands up, I have absolutely no doubt that 20 years ago, I probably didn't approach things in such a helpful way as I do now, maybe. So I'm sure I was a bit more feisty, less self-aware, all of that kind of stuff. But what I recognized was not feeling able to be yourself and in some ways feeling almost punished for it if you didn't want to play the political game and engage with the right people and say the right things in the right meetings. It didn't serve me well. And one of my defining moments was my HR director at the time made a comment when I asked the question about promotion and progression and what was getting in the way, that if I wanted to progress, I'd have to change my brand, which I guess in a nutshell is saying just change who you are. And that was really defining for me. I mean, it was really hurtful. I felt very angry, but ultimately I was very hurt because I was doing a bloody great job, by the way. I was delivering stuff. I'm sure my approach, because I am challenging and I was challenging without self-awareness then probably, didn't help me. I'm totally aware of that. But what I guess in that moment I became very passionate about consciously was helping people to be themselves at work. Now, of course, we can learn and grow and become more capable and gain more knowledge, absolutely. But if you are trying to do all of that whilst maintaining a front while wearing a mask, you're never going to be truly brilliant. And I see that around me all the time. I saw that around me a lot then. And so that's really where I went into another corporate world job on the back of that, actually. And in my interview, I remember saying right at the front, the beginning of the interview, if you're looking for someone who is going to just say yes and toe the line and be compliant, I'm really not the right person for you. And I say that with complete respect, but I don't want to step into another role that's similar to where I've been, and I felt very constrained. I almost felt like I was in a tight jacket. Is it a tight jacket? What do you call it?
Straight jacket.
A straight jacket. A tight straight jacket. And it was brilliant because the people who were interviewing me, there was 3 people interviewing me at the time. And after the interview, when I got the job, he said, you just saying that, I immediately wanted to recruit you. So I had a brilliant 4 years there because I stepped into a culture that truly embraced that. But if I hadn't said that, I guess I wouldn't have known. They wouldn't really have known what to expect from me. So I almost did a bit of contracting up front around what to expect from me. And then when I set up on my own, and then Rising Vibe has all been about, be honest about what you need, be honest about who you are, say what you mean, be explicit, don't be afraid, and do that with positive intent and with respect, absolutely. And if the organisation, the client, doesn't want to work with you, then that's okay, because you're not right to work together. But contorting yourself, we use a phrase at Rising Vibe, which is the corporate contortionist. People contorting to fit. And if you think about that as a metaphor, if you are twisted up and you stay stuck in a twisted position for so long, it becomes familiar and it will become comfortable because you've been stuck there for so long, but you're never going to be truly brilliant from that position. So that I guess is the backstory. It's not quite a nutshell, but almost.
Yeah. That's a fascinating backstory there, Lou, and some really interesting points there about culture and the politics and the games that are played in organisations, which I imagine you probably still see a fair bit of today.
Yeah.
You mentioned there setting yourself up and setting up your own business. What's the reality of growing your own business been like for you, Lou?
It's been hard, actually. And the reason, there's a number of reasons why it's been a challenge, I guess. And the main one, I think, has been me being the business. So before Rising Vibe, I had a business called Bolt from the U, and I was on my own for a couple of years, and then a business partner joined me. And then we separated, and then I set up Rising Vibe because I wanted to be much more overt about emotion and being very open about emotion in the workplace, which doesn't happen very often. But even in Bolt through to Rising Vibe, I have been, obviously as the founder, the front person. You work with clients and then they want to keep working with you. Then you have a glass ceiling. There's only so far you can stretch yourself. And I've been in burnout more than once. So that has been one thing that has really challenged growth, because to get people into the business who, I don't want people who are all like me, because that really isn't helpful, but that have a similar energy, a similar ethos, speak straight, say what they mean. That's actually been really challenging. I'm now finding some of that, but when COVID hit, I had to make 4 people redundant as well. So I started that journey of building the business. Then we got hit by COVID. And by the way, the business model might not have worked anyway. It might just have fast tracked it, the COVID situation. I didn't really get the chance to find out. But finding great people in a small boutique business when you are the face of it and people want to work with you because of that, which I totally get. It's like me with my hairdresser. I got my hairdresser, I just want him. Even though there's other great hairdressers, I just want him because I'm used to him and I like doing my hair, and I have great conversations with him. He knows me. It's very similar, isn't it? So breaking that bit is a real challenge for sure. I would say that's been the biggest challenge so far, is me working crazy hours to manage client expectation and not then having the space to find people who also are right for the business. And then when you do, you've got to spend some time integrating them into the business, because that's great for the business and it's great for them. That all takes time, which then takes you away from delivering for the client, which then can impact revenue and impacts business development. So I have found myself on a bit of a hamster wheel, which now, on the back of COVID, which has been brilliant, that we were doing stuff online. We work globally, so we were always doing things online. But we really have proven the concept that the work that we do works brilliantly online. So we now know that that's the business model we need to move towards. So less fixed costs, less people, but we need some significant time spent to get the work that we do online and do it really well. So still a bit of a hamster wheel thing going on. But I would say that has been the biggest challenge, actually, for me personally.
Just putting the business stuff aside for a second, you mentioned working crazy hours there and burnout. How do you manage that today from a personal point of view, Lou?
Well, So I know you talked about the masculine and feminine at the beginning of this podcast. I haven't been great at managing that, if I'm honest. And I, back in 2012, had very extreme adrenal fatigue, which, the adrenals are on your kidneys and they basically fire adrenaline when you need it. But when you are someone who works hard and plays hard, I don't play quite as hard anymore because I'm nearly 50, but, I give it a good go. But when you're doing that constantly, and, I'm someone who has high emotionality. So I'm someone who can, in one day, feel euphoric and then quite despairing. I feel emotions, on a huge spectrum, which means I'm firing adrenaline quite a lot of the time. And then it depletes you. Mm-hmm. So I haven't done a great job of managing that. But doing some of this work on the masculine feminine has really, really started to help me in the last 18 months. And the masculine energy, everybody has masculine and feminine essence, but some people have more masculine essence and some people have more feminine essence. And in the perfect world, we should stay true to what our natural essence is. And my natural essence is feminine, which is much more about nurture, intuition, more about the being, whereas masculine energy is more about the doing. And of course, the business world celebrates the doing. It doesn't celebrate the being. And so I think there are lots of us out there, men and women, even those with natural masculine essence, us having to ramp it up to survive with the constant achieving goals. And actually, once you've achieved a goal, actually the bar is raised immediately. You don't even take time to celebrate and be in the success. And that constant pressure to show up and operate in that way, especially for those with more feminine natural essence, means we have to work even harder to access the masculine, which means we become even more burnt out. Mm-hmm. So I have been rubbish at managing it, but my capacity is pretty high to be able to take stuff on, which is why I've managed. But now, because I'd love to be able to start winding down between 50 and 55, gradually, baby step, it's really hit me hard that I need to change things. So this masculine and feminine work has really helped me. Even things like making sure I go indoors at 6:30 and cook, which sounds ridiculous, but I would usually be in the office till sometimes 8:30 because my husband would sort the food out. But actually being in that creative, just cooking with a bit of music on, is a way of stepping out of my masculine energy, if that makes sense. Yep. Whereas coming straight in from the office at 8:00 at night and just sitting down and eating, I haven't allowed myself the space to come out of that into more of a being state. So then I'm going to bed late because I haven't really wound down. Then I'm getting up early, feeling tired, and then I start it all again. So really simple, obvious things that a lot of people roll their eyes at, me included, by the way. But that, cooking every night instead of being in the office till late, walking the dog every morning before I start work, which COVID has supported because, it's the only way we've been able to get fresh air, get outside. Those kind of really small things that I've really enjoyed have really started to help me manage my hours better. Because if I want to get up early to walk the dog, I've got to get to bed earlier. If I want to get into bed earlier, I need to be wound down earlier. If I want to wind down earlier, I need to get in from the office earlier. The way to wind down is to listen to some music and do some cooking. So I've probably only in the last 6 months started doing that, and it's made a massive difference. Huge difference.
It sounds like you've reached some very important decisions there in terms of managing yourself for the benefit of your business as well as your own well-being. But I imagine there was a step before reaching those decisions, a process perhaps that you had to go through to get there. And it's perhaps one, I'm guessing, that you would ordinarily take through your clients. So I recognise that this is relatively new thinking for you. But if you were working with a client, what sort of process would you take them through to reach those kind of decisions, Lou?
I don't know if this is actually going to answer the question directly, but what I'm thinking about when you ask me that is what we notice with all of our clients, and I'm sure if you thought about this, Rob, you'd about apply this to yourself. It's rare that we really know what we want to achieve. We rarely can access our outcome really easily. What we can access really easily are the problems that we have that we want to solve. So what we do to help our clients, and I guess this has been part of my own journey, which is one of the problems I wanted to solve was to stop being so knackered. I want to wind down in the next 5 years, and that is definitely an age thing that has brought me to an outcome, so to speak. And I'm going, well, I have to solve that problem if I'm going to achieve that outcome. And that's what we do with our clients. So we really help them immerse themselves in the problem that they want to solve. And then, a simple question, so what do you want instead of that, then helps to move people into more of an outcome so we can really tighten that up. But if you ask anybody to articulate beautifully, what is it you want from your people, from the next 5 years in your life, from your team, you will notice every time people go into what's not working in the problem first. So what we do is really embrace that and say, okay, let's talk about the problems that you have. And then let's really narrow it down, break it down to the biggest problems that are causing the most pain, that you think if you could at least chip away at that problem would have the biggest positive impact. And that's then where we start to move more into, okay, so this therefore is what you want first. So this is what we could do to support you to achieve that. I guess that would be the process.
Yeah. And do you find that actually happens then? So by focusing on the problems first and working through those, you actually kind of clear the path, and do you then find that the people you work with do have a clearer picture of what it is that they want in terms of the outcome?
Eventually, but I have to say it does take some time, and if you think about with one-to-one coaching, and me myself, I have coaches. You can leave a coaching session after sharing an issue, a challenge, and then you move into, okay, so this is what I want instead, and what's going to be my baby step action. Sometimes when you come back for the next session, you're right back in the problem again, because it depends how long that problem is hanging around for. But it definitely helps to truly immerse yourself in the problem first, because actually the only reason we engage in anything, and especially change, is it going to solve a problem that I have, and or is it going to help me achieve an outcome that I want? So if a change, a piece of work, a piece of learning, a purchase, to invest in something, if it's not going to solve us a problem or give us something that we want, we won't buy, we won't engage. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So, but what we notice is people start with problem first, because we are hardwired to scan for danger and look for problems. So it's much easier to get to that space first.
Yeah. So you find that an easier step, an easier place to kind of get going in that direction.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are actually hardwired to scan for danger on a ratio of 5-1. So we need 5 positive experiences of a particular context to override one experience that doesn't feel so positive, that feels negative.
Wow.
So if I was working with a client, this is quite a common challenge that a lot of our clients have, which is how do we engage, help our workforce to learn how to have conversations that feel uncomfortable. We're all about conversations that rise and vibe, and people shy away from conversations that feel uncomfortable. It's what we do. We need to have 5 helpful, positive experiences of having those uncomfortable conversations to override one that didn't feel so comfortable for us. And we could potentially have 3 of those conversations that feel uncomfortable that go well, weren't as bad as we thought they were going to be. And then we have one that doesn't feel so good, and it will completely override and delete the 3 unconsciously that we've had before that felt all right. But just knowing that is helpful, actually. Just knowing that is helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the work that you're doing is actually bringing awareness into the picture. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, because you can't actually move forwards and progress unless you know where you're starting from. So unless you're aware of your kind of start point, how do you know what it is that you need to do to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve? So I guess for me, going back to the burnout thing, for a long time, I was pretending for a bit unconsciously and then consciously that I was coping. And actually it wasn't until I was having such extreme nighttime panic attacks where I was a little bit afraid to go to bed, to be honest, because it was horrible waking up and not being able to breathe, that I had to completely acknowledge and own my A point, my start point, which is you are suffering with anxiety and you're really not coping. And it wasn't until I did that bit that I was able to make some progress, because the whole time I was denying, avoiding, or not aware of, and if I'm totally honest, it was more deny and avoid, because I felt a lot of shame associated with not coping, just because of all the stuff I've talked to you about, the masculine energy stuff. It wasn't until I was not only aware, but acknowledging that I was able to get better.
That must have been quite an experience for you. What happened next? What steps did you take to own or work with that problem or that challenge that you had there, Lou?
Well, I guess just actually saying out loud, my husband knew I was having nighttime panic attacks. I couldn't hide it from him. But to say to people, actually, I'm really struggling. I'm anxious. I can't actually pinpoint what the anxiety is about, but I'm not sleeping and I'm having panic attacks. And for people to just be really empathic and have loads of compassion. And pretty much every single one, even my really close friends, said to me, we had no idea, because you always are so focused and optimistic and upbeat. We had no clue that that was where you're at. That in itself helped. I felt immediately 10% better just from that. And then, of course, it's all the stuff I've just talked to you about that has been really, really dolly step action to start to do things slightly differently. And actually, when I started to, change the business model and employ more people, that was part of it. So I could start taking some time back. And then, of course, COVID hit and it put pay to that. So I have been making some changes, just really simple things, like delegating more, finishing earlier, doing things before work to get me in a better headspace. But really dolly steps, because I haven't actually really wanted to do a lot of that because it's not my normal pattern. So it felt too alien, because it wasn't enough do, focus, achieve. And it felt really uncomfortable and alien for me. But until I did that first bit, which was actually I'm not sleeping and I'm struggling to cope out loud, I couldn't even start to make those dolly steps. And it's the same for all of us. And that can be at client level, owning the fact that we've had an engagement survey and the results are diabolical. And we're sharing them with you as an external, support. And a lot of clients that share them feel really, really uncomfortable about the fact that that's where the organisation is at. But that's the first step, isn't it? To say, this is a big problem. Mm-hmm. So what's our first step? But the baby step bit is really key here. Trying to quantum leap and take a huge, big action and try and make a huge change will never work. And giving yourself a huge list, of 25 actions that will never get done is also really unhelpful. So we're all about baby steps, 1 to 3 things, keep them baby step. And a few of our delegates and clients will say to us, or coaching clients, so are you saying we've got to have really low expectations, Lou? And I always say, well, actually, that's not how I'd frame it. But if you want to frame it like that, then yeah, because what you'll do, you'll hit them, you'll achieve them. Yeah. And that will then build momentum and you'll keep going. Whereas having 25 actions and a huge quantum leap of an outcome that you don't get anywhere near and you only achieve one of the actions is so demoralizing and it stops you in your tracks and you lose momentum. So
yeah, got it. Coming back to yourself and your business, Lou, the changes that you've made, which sound to me like positive changes, what impact have you seen so far in terms of your business?
I guess there's been a couple of iterations. So 2019, change the business model, recruit more people. 2020, COVID hit, 4 people redundant. I mean, it was a horrible time, like it's been for so many people, but we had to do that to survive, change the strategy, get more online. We saw a big dip, as everyone did at the beginning, I guess between March and May, where no one was spending any money because nobody knew what was going to happen. And then we saw people starting to come back, existing clients coming back and saying, we need this kind of work more than ever. And then quite a few of our clients, contacts actually, that haven't worked with us yet, but have always been in touch, love our work, follow us, attend, we do our free webinars and taster sessions, said, what, at last we've got some budget because we can now engage in this kind of work. So then it really started to pick up. The online stuff, getting more creative online, has been brilliant. We've now got a learning platform where we are putting together programs online in a more of a passive, recorded, you can buy this as a product way, which we've talked about. I have talked about that for 10 years. And now, of course, it's happening because we can see, because of this last year, which has been horrific in so many ways, but there's been so much learning in so many ways, really, really has pushed us to do it quick. I think I saw something on social media that said, who knew the one thing that would get your digital strategy going would be COVID? And I think that's been true for so many people. I'm really changing the way that I'm thinking about the setup of the business, and we've touched on the masculine, feminine stuff. And in a business sense, in a business model sense, the feminine is your craft and the masculine is the structure. And there's something about always staying skilled in your craft. So always honing your skills, always looking to improve and get better in your craft. And you can be brilliant at your craft, but if you haven't got a robust structure, procedures, policies, a framework to hold your craft And this is really new to us as a concept, by the way, as a business. And the light bulbs that have gone off for me, I've had my own business for 12 years, generated decent revenue, have had a great time, but actually not yet to the level that I'd like to. And I've been asking myself, so what's missing? What's missing? What's missing? What's the gap? And doing this masculine, feminine stuff, I now see that the craft is great. The creativity, the ideas, the content that we use and the impact we have with our clients is fantastic, but we've not had enough structure. We've not had enough rigor. Spending too much money on stuff we don't really need to spend money on, for example. Not measuring the impact of certain things, from a marketing perspective. We've now got, a brilliant marketing manager on board who is doing all that kind of measurement. And is this campaign really having an impact? We weren't doing any of that before. So bringing all of that kind of masculine structure, we are hoping and believing that will really complement, because we have got a brilliant craft. What we do, we know has great impact, but I don't think we've had a robust enough masculine structure to hold that in, if that makes sense to you.
I love that. And I really like the picture that you're painting there in terms of the different attributes of the masculine and the feminine energies there, and how I can quite easily see how we can kind of work with that, and we can associate with some of those different labels, I suppose, for want of a better word, that you're associating to those energies.
Yeah.
And by almost putting those hats on, we can kind of look at the other perspective and what else is needed and maybe where the gaps are. But I also completely hear what you're saying. It's almost a little bit like left brain logic, the right brain creative, and trying to get those two sides to collaborate or harmonize in a really positive way.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because I was talking to a friend about this, and they just built a wall. I mean, it's a bit random. There is a purpose to this story.
Yeah.
They just built a wall, and they never built a wall before. They're very handy, DIY, can turn their hand to anything. And I was like, that's a great wall. And that's the feminine. It's like, hang on a minute, what do you mean building a wall is a feminine? I said, yeah, because it's your craft. If you were to build a business, put some structure around driving business and building houses or building walls on farmyards, if you were to make something more structured out of your craft of building walls, then you would be successful. Right now, you've just got a craft, you've built a great wall, but you've got no structure to make that a business yet. And then you've got other people who maybe, or other businesses that have got a great structure, but actually are not as successful as they could be because their craft is either out of date, or they're not always updating it, or they're not actually as skilled as they could be. So they're not as successful as they could be, even though they've got a really strong structure. I mean, this has been a huge light bulb moment for me, because I am more in the creative space, more of the feminine. I've got another idea. I've actually got, I think I showed it to you and we had a catch up before this podcast, Rob, of a sign from someone in the team that has, from last year, saying, I've had an idea, Lou Banks 2020. I've always got great ideas, but actually if you haven't got a container to put them in, it's not going to help. And that is obvious as I'm saying it to you now out loud, but I think I'm now surrounding myself with people in the team who have got that brilliant container stuff. Mm-hmm. Which I think is going to really help boost our business.
Yeah, that's great. That leads me to a question I'm eager to ask, and have been since we've been chatting actually, which is, what is it that you do professionally to continually improve your game, Lou?
I guess I'm just a bit of a learnaholic. Mm-hmm. So yes, I have done coaching qualifications. Of course, all of that stuff is really important in this field, and it's not regulated yet. And I think it's important that when we're in this coaching field, that we make sure we are always on top of that kind of thing. I also think it's absolutely critical that if you are in any coaching space, you yourself have at least one brilliant coach, because this is just my view and I feel very strongly about it. I have worked with people over the years who are qualified to the hilt, but have never actually experienced any challenging coaching as a coachee, where they have experienced the vulnerability that you experience when you are really in transformational coaching as a coachee. And I am really passionate about that. For me to be the best that I can be in my job, in my role, supporting others, I absolutely need to practice what I preach and go there myself. And that's one of our principles at Rising Vibe. We practice what we preach. We expect you to get to the heart of the issue, and we absolutely are committed to doing the same. So the qualifications piece is really important from a regulation point of view, absolutely. And then for me, there's that bit about whether it's a business coach, I have a business coach, I've got a coach, I work with someone from a therapy field. This masculine, feminine stuff that I'm doing is quite heavy in the woo, the wooey woo spiritual area. And actually the rising vibrational scale, that is the backbone model of our brand, comes from the emotional guidance system, which comes from the work of Abraham Hicks, which is very spiritual. But what we do, and this is something I am really passionate about, and I think I'm really good at, is I can take all of these theories and concepts and make them into something really practical. So for me, the bit about improvement is keep on top of your game in terms of your role, practice what you preach. If you're in the coaching world, then you need yourself to be at the other end of, a coach. You need to be in as a coachee as well. And just look for ways to be more creative, more forward thinking with your content, and make sure people can use it. I just this morning was speaking at an event, and the feedback we got pretty instantaneously was, that was so interesting, and you've also given us some stuff we can go away and use practically. Because we've all experienced that, haven't we, where we've listened to something or we've attended something and it's been so interesting, but a couple of days later you're going, that was good, but I'm not really sure what I do with it.
Yeah.
So for me, that's really important. That is a huge, another one of our principles is we make it simple and we keep it practical. And if we can't do that with a concept, a theory, the psychology stuff, the neuroscientific stuff, we love all of it and we are always learning about that. But if we can't take it and make it practical so that someone can go away and do something with it in their business, for our clients, we don't use it.
That's fantastic. It's been a great conversation with you today, Lou. There's so much in just this short conversation that we've had that I'm really excited about sharing with our listener, recognizing that our listener is likely to be a coach and maybe experiencing some of that vulnerability that you mentioned just a moment ago. And you've been very kind to share some of your story and how you've been vulnerable in your own business. Perhaps as a parting thought, or maybe some guidance or some maybe even advice, what tips would you give to our listener that may be experiencing some of the things that you talked about there with burnout, or maybe just their business running away with them a little bit at the moment? What would you say to maybe a slightly younger Lou or our listener going through that right now?
I guess a bit like, I don't know whether this has just kind of popped into my head, but a bit like pensions, when you are younger. And I remember in my 20s in the corporate world, and they're saying you can start putting some money into a pension pot. And I remember thinking, God, I'm only 24. I'm not doing that. I'd rather have the money in the bank so I could go out and have a drink at the weekends. For me, burnout is a bit like that. It's when you're younger, you can do it. You can cope with it more. I think that would be my advice to the younger me. Just be mindful and just consider, if you carry on the way you're going to carry on, what might happen? What might be the consequence? Almost fast track into the problem you're going to be in if you don't start making some baby dolly steps now. And doing baby dolly steps now is completely doable and easy. So putting some very basic disciplines in, even if, in your mid-20s, early 30s, you say, every Friday, I'm absolutely going to finish at 4:30. And you do that for 2 years. And then after 2 years, you make another baby step. That would be my absolute advice around burnout. In terms of business, for me, it's got to be about this balancing the masculine and the feminine in your business. So if you are someone, and I know quite a few of these, by the way, people who have set up on their own and then gone back into the corporate world because it's not worked. And they're very good at what they do, by the way, like really good at what they do. It's because they completely lack the masculine container. So what could you do to hone your masculine kind of doing stuff, but also bring someone in to support you who does that more naturally? Mm-hmm. And if you're someone who has got a really tight ship in terms of your business, but you're kind of just not getting the business, you're not getting the follow-up, you're not getting the repeat business that you think you deserve, I guess it's asking yourself, am I really honing my craft? Am I really, for example, what I've talked about as a coach, am I actually engaging in learning as a coachee? Am I practicing what I'm preaching? Am I doing everything that I could do to be the most brilliant version of me in this role? That for me, just based on what I'm learning right now, would be 100% my advice. Balance that in your business.
That's fabulous. Thanks ever so much for sharing those insights, Lou. Some really, really valuable stuff there based on your experience. So as we wrap up, I'd love to ask you, I'd love to ask you where our listener could connect with you. But before I do that, what's next for you?
Hopefully retirement in 5 years, Rob, to be fair. That's what I'm hoping in. And actually, that genuinely is a goal now that I have. And I've got some very clear baby steps, but immediate next steps for the business is to just get the work that we do online in a brilliant platform, delivering the content in a way that works as well online as it can in a room. That's the immediate next step for us.
That's brilliant. And for our listener, where can they best connect with you, Lou, to find out more about you and, of course, Rising Vibe?
So the best option is just to go to our website, which is rising-vibe.com. And you can email us at hello@rising-vibe.com. There's lots of ways to contact us via the website. Yeah, and then you can follow us on social media, but all of the information is on our website. So that's absolutely the best place to go to learn about the business and, to absolutely get in contact with me directly through the hello email.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Lou. It's been absolutely fascinating chatting to you and learning more about Rising Vibe and your story.
Thank you for having me. I've loved it. I've really enjoyed it. And actually, just talking to you, it just helps me process even more stuff about the business. So I've had some great learning as well as having a great conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Lou.